Do you have a gun in your house? Well, 45% of Americans do, certainly, and that actually is the highest percent of Americans who reported to us that they have a gun in the home going all the way back to the early 1990s. We've actually asked this question periodically going back to the 50s, and when we first asked it in the decade of the 50s, the number who said they had a gun in the home was 49%. So we actually, right now in 2011, are not that far off from where we were back in the 50s in terms of Americans reporting that they have a gun in the home. Why Americans are a little more likely to say they have a gun in the home now is unclear to us, but we can look at those segments of the population that are most likely to have a gun in the home. We think here at Gallup that two of the most important predictors have to do with region, where you live. Guns are clearly more prevalent in homes in the South and in the Midwest. They are particularly unprevalent, as you see there, in the East, where only 34% of Americans who live in the East report that they have guns. Second, if you live in a small town or a rural area, you're much more likely to have a gun than if you live in a big city or in the suburbs. In fact, 6 out of 10 Americans that we interviewed who say they live in a small city or rural area have a gun in the home. Other than that, we find some demographic differences and, of course, some very interesting political differences. Men are more likely to say they have a gun in the home than women. Conservatives, quite a bit more likely to say they have a gun in the home than liberals, and Republicans are more likely to say they have a gun in the home than Democrats. Now, some of these political differences are driven by, or at least correlated with, the regional differences, because conservatives and Republicans are more likely to live in the South, for example, and less likely to live in big cities. But for whatever the reason, if you want to find a prototypical gun home in this country, you would probably go to the South, in a rural area, and a home, of course, that has a male in it. Again, 45% of Americans at this point in history tell us they have a gun in the home, and that's the highest we've seen going back to 1993. I'm Dr. Frank Newport, Gallup's Editor-in-Chief.